So if you're hoping that all of a sudden, after hundreds of years of exploitation, a minority of rich people are going to decide to be like, oh, after just, reading a book or hearing you on a podcast, they're going to be like, well, that makes sense. I think it's a bit unfair, so I'm going to get rid of my wealth. Some people are doing it, and I've been working with, million and multimillionaire families that are actively actually getting rid of their wealth, realizing, the colonial and exploitative legacy of their family wealth. So there's a minority of people, I think, that are just realizing that this accumulation of wealth is blocking the resolution of climate issues, and so they're trying to just unlock that. For the rest, we'll have to use the tools we've always been using. I mean, you've talked of revolution, but there's also very silent daily revolution happening at the level of states. So now you're right to say that, there's a huge power of lobby, and Julia Cagé on The Price of Democracy has really shown this very well. And so there's a lot of control of people's wealth to influence political decisions, but that's not all of what politics is about. There is also progressive policies being passed, and there's also massive, redistribution happening already in our system. Very old, sophisticated systems of social security and limits of all kind. In France, for example, the économie sociale et solidaire, social and solidarity economy, is a very novel legal framework that, although, for a kind of almost post-capitalist looking economy. So I think today we basically, my main point would be, we don't need to wait for that minority to do the right thing. They won't. It's like fossil fuel company. I mean, it's so funny that to say like, we'll just wait for fossil companies to stop drilling and selling oil. I mean, we've been waiting since basically the 70s. Fossil fuel companies were the first one aware of climate change, and they're digging more than they've ever been digging. And I think, if they have no pressure, democratic pressure to shut down, we'll basically, climb ourselves to a 4+4+5+6 degree Mad Max world. And so what we need is to build democratic pressure with whatever democratic institutions we have. The Citizen Convention for Climate in France was a very good example of that. And to shut down the minority that is basically destroying the future of humanity. That's just a basic thing we do in many other instances, like we have a justice system that if there's one single person in a place that is causing havoc and enormous damage to all the others, we'll just not teach self-defense to everyone else and be, okay, guys, here's bulletproof jackets and you need to work on your hiding skills. No, we identify the problem and we take it out. Same thing now. Let's identify the problem. The problem is narrower than we think. It lies within, a few big corporations, a class of decision makers, of wealthy decision makers that just refuses to let it go because it's too lucrative. Then we just need to make it legally and culturally impossible for these people to keep doing what they're doing. It's a political maze to understand how to do this, but I think right now that should be the goal. And that's why I like to talk about how to blow up an economy in reference to Andreas Malm, how to blow up a pipeline. Right now, we really need to stop thinking about the transition as a matter of like additions. Let's build nice little renewable energy companies and all these cool cooperatives, and let's not address the problem and try to replace the system. No, that's fine. Over the long term, that's going to be very important. But right now, what we need to do is to shut down whatever is emitting greenhouse gases. We need to remove certain technologies and practice out of existence. We need to degrow the economy. So we need to do this, and then we will fill that space with many alternatives that are already available. We don't need to wait science fiction for people to invent, nice steady state, not-for-profit cooperatives. These actually been existing for a very long time. And in some countries, I've talked about France and the social and solidarity economy, the legal framework is already here.
So the idea here is democratic pressure and managing to then have the politicians change the policies so that corporates cannot do that anymore. I mean, one of the questions that my audience had on LinkedIn was, how will the largest companies justify waning profits to stakeholders? Most importantly, institutional investors. So in that case, in the European context, it was asking, how do pension fund and large banks would react to degrowth by companies they've invested in? in that case, I guess we are going back to the fact that we just need to let that happen. Or
what is being certain is that today we have a choice to make. Either we continue making profits for shareholders, we know how to do this, we can continue, and we fry the only planet we have irreversibly, and that has already started. Or we accept and acknowledge the fact that for several years, these revenues are not going to increase and some of them are going to go down. That's the choice we have. The impossibility of decoupling means that it's a choice. You cannot reconcile the two. And people that have tried have been very bad at showing proof that this can be so. And I've been doing conferences at many of these companies, and I've heard their best argument. I was like really genuinely listening. I was like, show me the proof, show me your numbers, show me your strategy, show me your model. And I was taking the time to look into this. I have not found a single proof. All they have is wishful scenarios of like, we hope this happens. And 80% of that is not even real scenarios. They are kind of marketing depictions of desired futures that legitimate the business as usual. So you could call this some kind of greenwashing. So yeah, today we need to acknowledge the fact that during a period of transition, there's not going to be a win-win-win. That's the thing. Sustainable development as a concept since the late 80s was built on that concept of win-win-win. We do things and everyone like works, like energy gets cheaper for households, you get profit opportunities for new companies, the emissions go down and the government's revenue goes up and health costs for the governments go down and it's all happy and nice. I think today we've reached a point where we have to acknowledge the fact that, we're going to do some massive modifications. And some people are going to get relatively worse off than they were before. And that's where the fairness of that transition is so important. Whatever you touch, if you touch the mobility sector, if you touch education, if you touch public finances, you need to make sure that the people that get worse off are not the people that are already at the bottom today, because that's unsustainable. And that's just unsustainable in the sense of it defeats the purpose of an economy, which is to satisfy its need. So basically, you want to make sure that the people that are better off today will be worse off in the sense of like, those people are the ones that can shoulder that transition best. They're in a space of high comfort, high security. They can see their income go down. That's not a problem. They're not going to be thrown in abject poverty. The same way that if you're earning, let's say you're in the top 1% of income earners in France, so you're above like 6,500 euros after tax per month. Let's say that get cuts in two. Like, you're not going to go hungry, or you're not going to be in the streets. If you're working minimum wage and your income is being cut in half, you fall into poverty. So I think the balance here in the transition is we need macroeconomically, so that can be done in the spirit of social justice, to make sure that the people today that have the biggest ability to pay and also the biggest historical responsibility in greenhouse gases. We don't talk about this very often, but there's a high correlation between wealth and emissions. So it's pretty normal, I would say, that rich countries and the globally rich in general, wherever they live, like bear the brunt of the transition because they're the one that have really enjoyed a high carbon lifestyle. So I think there are many ways of justifying why the split of the effort is going to be different in that transition. And we should not pay, I don't find it convincing, the rich people that say like, we are all in the same boat and we all need to reduce part of that. It's like you're living in a corridor, and you share a corridor with a lot of different students. And, and you're running out of food because there's two people in the corridor that have been eating like 80% of the food. And they're like, okay, guys, we all need to reduce our food intake by 50%. And like, you would look at them and be like, dude, there's a bit of a problem in your calculus. Like, just stop overeating all the food, and then we can all have enough. It's basic childlike logic that basically people are trying to rebut using highly sophisticated economic concepts that I don't find very convincing as an economist, because I can see through them. So I think in the end, we're back to a very simple philosophical problem, is we are going to have to use less natural resources. And so we will have to share them more equitably.
If you found what you just listened to interesting, listen to the full episode with Timothée. You will learn what is the current problem with growth. Do we need growth to overcome inequality? What is green growth and why is it a myth? What is the difference between degrowth and recession? And in general, is growth something compatible with entrepreneurship and green entrepreneurship? Follow the link in the description for the full episode.